Hey, what's up, guys? Marcus here, the Kingston Critic, coming to you from Kingston, Jamaica. And this is the review of Star Trek Picard Episode 2. Okay, so, in my first review, I really enjoyed, Episode 1, which was entitled Remembrance. I enjoyed it because I'm a huge fanboy of Patrick Stewart. It's really cool to see him reprise his role as Jean-Luc Picard from The Next Generation on all the Star Trek movies in the franchise. My main concerns I brought up in the first review were that hopefully, hopefully, Star Trek Picard will not go the route of Star Trek Discovery, which is ultra feminist, and it's written poorly, and it basically destroyed the series, right? But Star Trek Picard is produced by the same person, who's Alex Kurtzman, so it's probably gonna go down that route. Anyways, let's get into the review, and then I'll give you my thoughts on where I think things are going. Alright, so Maps and Legends starts out, we get a flashback. It's 14 years before the present day, and it's a first contact day on a place called the Utopia Planitia Shipyards in Mars. And this is basically the backstory for the synthetics, because we learn in episode 1 that there is a significant distrust of synthetics or artificial people, because a bunch of them killed a bunch of people on Mars on that day. So we kind of see one of them come in, he looks like Data with the green skin, and there is an awkward exchange of dialogue between the co-workers and the person, which, in these situations, I never really get it, because it's like, okay, it's 2500, right? The year 2500. You know what I mean? If you have AI walking around, why is it always so weird when people are like, oh, that guy's so weird, he's so strange? Yeah, because he's not human. Anyways, awkward banter aside, we see that one of the workers says, they're weird, but, they can rip through titanium, without breaking a sweat. This is to demonstrate their strength and obviously the obvious threat they face if they were to rise up, which we know they're going to do. But what we see is that a ship appears in orbit and seems to hijack their minds, and then they go crazy and start killing everybody before the synthetic kills himself, right? So the backstory is set up, and now we have the question in our minds, well, who did this? Who had the technology to hijack their minds and make all this madness happen? So now back in present day, we kind of go back to Picard's chateau in France. The Chateau Picard, where, Picard is now trying to figure out what happened to Daj. And Daj is the twin sister of Soji, who died in episode 1. So they're trying to kind of like do some sleuthing, as it were. And, this is kind of like, an investigative, FBI-esque kind of scene where they're just trying to break it down and figure out who done it. And it doesn't play well for Picard, because in most of this episode he's literally just asking questions and having them answered. So his colleague Laris, who is like a Romulan woman with an Irish accent, which I find very funny, but here's what you got to do, Picard. So she is kind of helping him to put the pieces together. She produces some like very convenient secret technology that can recreate the scene of the crime, which makes them kind of find out what's going on. But then she says the footage was scrubbed, and she basically, in a very short period of time, figures out everything that's going on with a lot of exposition. So I hope this isn't a theme for her character, because in the previous episode, she basically explained everything about this secret society in a massive, scene of exposition. So more exposition here. We learn about a little bit more about the Zatvash, which is, like a secret sort of police that's in the Romulan society, and they're talking about how the Zatvash is, killing off synthetics, and that they hate synthetics. And so now we are back on a Borg cube where we see Soji and Narek, and Soji is a twin sister of Daj, who obviously I said was killed in the last episode. And Narek is now her love interest, so they're kind of talking and interacting and getting to know each other, and we kind of get a better sense of, Soji's character. She's actually curious about Narek, who's Romulan, and Romulans are historically very secretive people. And as she tries to get a little closer to him, he says, I'm a very secretive person. And right away, I can tell that there is more to his character, obviously. And there are two reasons I say this. The first reason is that, just from watching a million movies in my life, you know that a cute young girl sleeps with interesting guy who is secretive, then interesting guy most likely is some kind of villain or double agent or something, right? But also because in Star Trek Discovery, pretty much every male character written in the show was a bad guy. Every love interest was a bad guy. So seeing him in the show, immediately you're like, okay, he's not a good person. And this is confirmed, because later on in the episode we see that he is the sister of a really, really bad person. Sorry, he's a brother of a really, really bad person. But anyways, we kind of see more of what's going on in the Borg cube. They say that they're active Borg on the cube still, and they're treating the whole station as an artifact. They're treating it as a place where you basically, they're doing research and they are reclaiming Borg. So they're kind of taking people who were trapped on the Borg cube and removing their implants and trying to bring them back, into some kind of regular life. So that's her role there, and she's a scientist on the ship. So we kind of go back to Picard's chateau, and this is really cool because we see Dr. Moritz. And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Moritz was like, a character way back in Next Generation, and he comes to tell Picard about his medical report, which is not good. Apparently, Picard has some kind of neurological disease, which is probably fatal. So Picard says, well, give me a clean bill of health because I have to try and help this girl who could be Data's daughter. That's his motivation, right? So, he now goes to Starfleet. And I find this scene very interesting because I know they said they're going in like a different direction with this whole, they're going to be dropping F-bombs or whatever. Earlier, Laris dropped an F-bomb when doing the research, in her Irish Romulan accent. And then Admiral Kirsten Clancy, who Picard is talking to, basically just curses him out for even trying to get a ship, because he went there asking for a ship and telling them about the secret, Romulan force and so on. And in the scene, I think her reaction was justified. A little bit over the top because, they are speaking Admiral to Admiral. Picard had gone on that TV show or whatever, the intergalactic show, and kind of like, spit all over Starfleet. So her anger was justified, But as watching it, I was like, I'm pretty sure every Admiral or whatever is going to be female for the whole series. The same thing happened in Star Trek Discovery, and it looks like the same thing was happening here. So anyways, Picard is told to go home. Then now, Admiral Clancy talks to Commodore O, which is another woman in a position of power in the Star Trek unit. Star Trek is just I don't know, it's just hilarious, man. This is so funny because in Discovery it's the same thing. Like all of Starfleet was female. Anyway, so Clancy reports a meeting to Commodore O, who, is like, well, if Romulans were on Earth, we'd know about it and it would be an act of war. Obviously, she's in with the Vulcans, and we find out that she's a bad person, and she brings in Lieutenant Rizzo, who is another bad person, and was, I guess, part of Dodge's ambush and her subsequent killing. Alright, so what's happening now is that as I'm watching this, I'm thinking about Picard's character development. His motivation is obviously very strong because he is a friend of Data, and, he is searching for the killer of Data's daughter, right? But he's basically just running around getting screamed at and not really doing anything. Like, he's not using his own intellect or his decades of experience to accomplish anything. And I hope that is also not a theme. Because in the original Next Generation, what was interesting is that the crew as a collective were the people that figured things out as a collective. Data had extreme intelligence, but he was not emotionally aware, and sometimes his extreme intelligence would actually get the crew in trouble. and people like Picard or Riker would have to bring him back into reality and ground him, or show him things that allowed his intelligence to work better effectively on a whole. Now, what I'm seeing here in Picard is just people are just explaining things to this old man who's running around, who probably is having dementia. And, you know, I don't think that's good for character development because, again, it just makes him look like an object that's being used as opposed to a super cool character with his own intelligence who can figure things out. Anyway, so we go back to the Borg cube, and you know, we kind of meet some more characters. There's a little bit more exposition. He takes a taxi to some location which looks like, you know, somebody living in a trailer home, and this is where we meet Raffi, who is, you know, the big sassy. I'm assuming the sassy black woman, right? So she meets him by pointing a gun at him. We don't know why, because we don't have her backstory yet. But, you know, he has a bottle of wine, and he says Romulans are on Earth. So she's like, okay, she's going to listen. So that's what happens. And the episode closes out with a conversation between Narek and Rizzo, who turns out to be sister. And, you know, now you kind of see that they're working together, and he is doing kind of James Bond style infiltration into the whole Daj Soji situation. So it has set up an interesting narrative, and the episode closes with us kind of saying, okay, we understand who the villains are and we understand where it's going. Now my thoughts. Alright, so the first things first is that Star Trek is setting up a very similar Discovery precedent where it is kind of pushing the feminist thing a little bit too much. I say this because, you see, when you have the same characters over and over represented the same way, it's kind of boring. It doesn't make the story become interesting because every character is going to become a placeholder and situations are going to become predictable. So in Star Trek Discovery, every admiral, every commodore, every lieutenant, every third character was a woman, and for the most part, these women were always kind of terse and aggressive, but righteous and portrayed as good. And when men came into the picture, they were usually stupid, fumbling, soft, or just really bad people. And it would be good if they could just kind of switch things up where sometimes, you know, the female characters were equally duplicitous or bad people, or so it's not so predictable. Because, you know, in this new Star Trek, the whole fleet is female, it seems like, and when men come into the picture, it's like as soon as they come into the picture, you're just like, okay, bad guy, right? I don't have anything against female leadership. I mean, hey, you know, Jamaica has the most women in like managerial and leadership positions in the world, so we're kind of far ahead of the curve there. So it's not about me talking about reality. For me, it's more just like really predictable and boring writing, okay? And also just a set design, man. It's like when you're looking at just every other shot, it's like every other person is a woman. And I saw this in Terminator Dark Fate and a few other films where it's like they're inserting women so much into the story that it kind of overrides the kind of realistic sense of things. You know, just on this Borg shipyard, every other person is a woman. Like every other character who's introduced in the episode is female, right? Every secondary character is female. You know, so it's just a bit weird. Because I found it weird in Discovery. It made everything feel very lopsided. And what they're doing now is that, you know, just like in Discovery, it's kind of like they bring back these old characters, but they don't give them anything significant to do. So Patrick Stewart is great. He's a fabulous actor, but I hope he's not just going to be running around asking for help and, you know, slowly going into dementia as other characters have to prop him up and solve his problems. This would completely destroy and render useless the Captain Picard character. And I think that, you know, if they go the Discovery route, that's what they're gonna do, and destroy his legacy. Because to me, it's not just a feminist thing. It's like, why are you using the character in a certain way? LaForge is a technical wizard. Riker is insightful and smart. Picard is forthright and has very strong convictions. Data was an android who wanted to seek humanity. All of these things that when they kind of linked together created an amazing set of people who could solve problems in a certain way. So far, all I'm seeing is lots of exposition from the women, explaining everything, saying, "Oh, here's why this happened, and here's why you're wrong." And I don't think it sets up the right tone for the series thus far. And most likely it's not going to change. But again, I'm watching Picard because I'm a huge fanboy. And I'm also reviewing it because, I've always wanted to review a show, and I said, like, why not this one? So, I mean, I hope it gets better, but most likely what's going to happen is that it's going to fall into Discovery territory. It is not like Discovery. It's not as badly written. It's reasonably entertaining. But I just don't want it to fall into the same place where it's just, man bad, woman good, And if it falls into that dynamic, it's going to kill the series completely. We're only at episode 2, but yeah, I'm already seeing the stirrings of those things, But again, I'll wait till episode 3 to make some deeper convictions. All right, that's it for the Kingston Critic this episode. Peace.